Welcome to Women Mastering Midlife, where we dive deep into the rich complexities of womanhood in our middle years. I'm your host, Victoria Bird, a pharmacist, certified women's health coach, and your guide on this transformative journey. Whether you're navigating perimenopause, thriving in menopause, or mastering midlife's many transitions, this is your weekly dose of expert guidance, compassionate support, and a judgment-free space to explore it all. Here, we're empowering women to master midlife on their terms, reclaiming our health, our happiness, and our power. Together, we'll rewrite the narrative around this remarkable stage of life, from something to dread into a beautiful, bold transition. I'm so glad you're here. So if you've noticed your eyes feeling drier than they used to, or you found yourself holding the menu a little further away than you used to, you're not imagining it. There's a real physiological story behind both of those changes, and part of it traces back to some hormonal shifts we talk about on this podcast all the time, but some of it is getting older. Joining me today is Dr. Neda Gioia, an optometrist and certified nutrition specialist who founded Integrative Vision, a practice built around treating eye health through a whole body lens. She's also a fellow and former president of the Ocular Wellness and Nutrition Society and trained in functional medicine through the Institute for Functional Medicine. We're going to cover a lot today: what's actually happening with dry eye in midlife, the role estrogen plays in ocular tissues, why so many of us suddenly need reading glasses in our 40s, and what we can do starting now to protect our vision as we age. Thank you so much, Dr. Gioia, for joining me today. I was particularly excited by not only the fact that you do talk about midlife ocular health, but also that you have a functional medicine component. The pharmacist / functional medicine in me is very excited to get into the whole body lens of why we need to be taking care of our eye health at this stage.
Thank you so much for having me today. And I'm so excited to know that there's even an interest in this subject matter. Obviously, I'm passionate about eyes, but layer that with nutrition, functional medicine, and unfortunately, the lack of education that we have for women's health and how it integrates with all of that. So I'm just excited to be here and that you actually are thinking along these lines in terms of educating your audience.
Yeah, I'm excited to get beyond, I turn 46 in a couple days, and this week I have been gifted the necessity of using readers with my contacts. Mm-hmm. and I've experienced what stress and poor nutrition can do to my eye health. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to get into this, because I think a lot of women just equate everything to menopause, but there's a much broader lens that we should be taking.
Absolutely. And we're close in age. I just turned 46 myself. And the funny part is I actually started experiencing things in my eyes from menopause transition, or perimenopause technically, that I've been speaking about. And luckily I understand it, but just because I'm knowledgeable about it doesn't mean that I actually was able to stop all of it from happening. So I understand it very much so as a personal kind of experience in addition to the education component.
Yeah, isn't that how it goes? I feel like there's a lot of people who know a lot of things about a lot of things, but when you finally get into it, you're like, oh, wow. Even I, with all my background, can't stop this.
Yeah, I totally understand that. Yeah.
So I feel like eye care is rarely part of the menopause conversation, and being part of the Menopause Society and reading the latest journals and all of the clinical pearls that are coming out, I'm not seeing anything on eye care. And so are you finding that as well, as somebody who that is your passion in your field?
So absolutely. And that's one of the reasons I am contributing to podcasts, educational conferences, academia. I mean, the layers are very high in terms of what I'm trying to establish. I call it bi-directional education. So it's not just me educating the consumer that this is happening, but also my colleagues that are professionals that we should be looking out for this. And not only looking out for this, there are certain conditions that the patient doesn't even know is happening, that they have higher risk with perimenopause or early menopause stages. So the dialogue is not there, yes, and the awareness is not there. And that is, it's okay. We have to start somewhere. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I have seen some things trickle in over the last few months. And I kind of have to say, I'm creating this like mini campaign, like almost like a public service announcement that, hey, this is a part of the perimenopause transition. And not only that, there are risks involved with eye health. Like, longevity, of course, you could have awesome physical capabilities, but your vision is essential. It's essential for a lot of things in life that, are part of obviously aging as well. But yes, the women component in this was actually more of an accident for me. Everything is personal. I always say I've done everything post my standard optometry training because of some sort of personal reason. And I've always been in women's advocacy, period. Doesn't, just as a whole, I always say, put me at the front of the line for anything that is, for women in business or anything that really puts women on the forefront. But this was like a personal kind of thing because I actually suffered a massive knee injury about 2 years ago that no one was able to tell me why. And it was very unusual. And now knowing all of the musculoskeletal issues that happened during perimenopause that I was not aware of, I kind of got mad at the situation. Yes. And I always when I get mad, I like to do something. I'm like one of those people who's like a doer. I don't like to just like complain. I need to have a little bit of, some sort of hope, some sort of action item. And then I started digging into my patients that I constantly used to say, hey, during perimenopause, yeah, this happens, that happens, and thinking they're getting the proper care behind the scenes with perhaps their gynecologist, whoever that's managing them for their hormones. And then actually going through that myself and seeing like, wow, this is bad. Like no one's actually getting proper care unless you actually are an advocate for yourself. And that just that really unraveled this whole research year for me. And because of my injury, I had to take a leave of absence for almost a year. It was really bad. And I used that to my advantage. I used it to research what has happened in ocular health research as it pertains to sex hormones. Where are we going? What is true? What is false? What is maybe? And I love learning about it. And again, that advocacy piece of it really just makes me so excited to bring this to front and center because there is a lack of knowledge at so many levels. And I hope things like this elevate the conversation.
Yeah. So what are you seeing in the research that you did? What kind of connection can you find between the sex hormones and the changes that happen in the perimenopause and menopause transition and ocular health for women specifically?
So as much as I want to say the eye is just an eye, the eye has a lot of sub components. So we have the front of the eye all the way to the back of the eye. And many people don't even understand that the back of the eye, the retina, is a part of the central nervous system. Like this is like all new information. A lot of people don't realize how nuanced different parts of the eye are. And back in the day, let's just say 80s, 90s, the eye was considered to be sex neutral. So, it was like, their sex hormones do not affect the eye. Fast forward to probably the late 90s into early 2000s, the studies started coming out. Whether it's human studies, murine models, et cetera, that oh, wait, we have receptors in every single type of tissue in the eye. So that's kind of where it started. And not only do we have different receptors, we have different subreceptors. So we have estrogen, alpha, and beta receptors. We have testosterone receptors or androgen receptors alongside progesterone receptors. So now if we take that clinically, and now we subdivide it between all of the different parts of the eye, going from the front to the back, they have different roles. And just like they have different roles in, the rest of our bodies outside of obviously, doing what they do for reproduction, we start to see how it shifts and modulates key functions in the ocular tissue. For example, the cornea. Estrogen has been found to help with wound healing. That's the front of the eye. The meibomian glands, these are in our eyelids that help promote oil production. There are tons of androgen receptors, testosterone, that are found in these meibomian glands. Our lacrimal glands, which produces tears, estrogen receptors, progesterone. And then going all the way through the eye into the back of the eye, we also find these receptors as well, which have key functions in being anti-inflammatory, neuroprotective, etc. So I think the question is not so much now, how does menopause affect the eye? It's more of course it affects the eye. Now let's figure out all these mechanisms of actions. How is it actually modulated? And what are some of the sound information that we have? And luckily, we're not at a zero. So it's not like all of this is kind of new. I mean, these receptors, we've been aware of this for 20 plus years. And that's another thing that I find, fascinating, that no one's really extrapolated, let's just say a pharmaceutical or, talking about this even in the general menopause kind of framework. But yes, so foundationally, just knowing that piece is really essential to understand what comes next and what are some of the symptoms or increased risk factors that a patient might observe during the perimenopause into menopause stages.
Yeah. So for somebody who has not onboarded hormone therapy, either they haven't gotten there yet, they're choosing not to, it's contraindicated. What are some of the things that you start to recognize as being a hormonal shift issue versus stress or aging or nutrition, but just strictly hormones? Have you found there's a link between certain symptoms or things arising that are basically hormone driven?
So we know, again, going back to the research gaps, right? So we have a ton of research gaps, and I don't think your audience is unaware of that as a whole, where, just female hormones as a whole there's super, large amounts of research gaps. So knowing that, and then taking that and extrapolating it to obviously a very specific organ like eye health, to kind of say that there's only, something is causative because of just a hormone issue is very hard to prove right now. But, and it's actually I would say even in a lot of chronic health conditions, it's very hard to kind of prove, even with autoimmune, you have autoimmune because of this one factor only, right? So we have to kind of look at the body, and this goes back to the functional medicine kind of viewpoint. We have to look at it as multifactorial. Hormones can be one of the risk factors that exacerbate certain things. So for example, going back to our, meibomian gland dysfunction, which is an oil producing part of your eyelid for tear production. If your androgen levels tank, let's just say during menopausal shifts, which can happen pretty drastically, does that affect the production of that gland? And the answer is, of course it does, right? But are there other factors that affect that gland? Yes. Overusing digital devices and not blinking enough. So you have a lack of pumping mechanism. You have nutritional deficiencies that can also exacerbate it. So there are other factors, but yeah, I would say there's not I wouldn't say because of one hormone shift, you're going to get ... of a disease in the eye. I do think, though, because of understanding hormone shifts, we might be better equipped and better, able to manage that patient. And that doesn't mean hormone therapy that you were kind of alluding to before. So just because we talk about a hormone doesn't always mean you need that hormone, right? So, and we know HRT is not for everybody, and that's fine. And even believe it or not, a lot of the data that goes into the treatment side of ocular dysfunction as it relates to hormone therapy is actually completely mixed. So there is no, oh, just because you have certain eye condition, oh, you should go on hormone therapy. That is zero proof right now. If anything, some of the studies show it can get worse, like with certain types of estrogen, certain dry eyes can actually get worse. So it's not you have an eye condition and you should have hormone therapy. It's you have an eye condition, your hormones might be affecting you. What are the ways that we can help mitigate or especially help the symptomology that makes you comfortable too, and reduce your risk factors if there is a relation to some sort of more vision loss kind of scenario like glaucoma and whatnot. So I wouldn't say because you can't get hormone therapy, you're having an eye health,
crisis.
Yeah, no. Yeah. And I want your viewers to know that it is just, we can actually start thinking about other parts of this whole mechanism when we know what is actually upregulating or downregulating or what's missing in action in those various tissues of the eye.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's funny because I've been in the menopause space. I've been in pharmacy long enough that I was actually working inside a retail pharmacy when WHI came out. So I saw the dust collect. Oh yeah, I saw the dust collect on the hormone therapy, and I've ridden the wave of all of it. And now I feel like the pendulum is swinging to where there's just like, you've got this problem, throw some hormones on it. You've got that problem, throw some hormones on it. But we're not addressing other things that are factors in whole health wellness. And so from a functional medicine standpoint, what are some things that we should be doing or looking at outside of hormone replacement to take care of our eyes?
I won't get into screening yet. So when I started my digging, let's just call it, one of my primary, functions as a clinician is being a nutritionist. So obviously I have the functional medicine arm, but I also have a very distinct nutritionist, background. And it was actually shocking, to be quite honest. And it's not because it's shocking because my counterparts, my professional, didn't even know that this was a thing. But one of the biggest probably take-home nutritional fixes we can make in menopause care, perimenopause care for eye health is understanding your omega-3 status. So let's talk about this. Mm-hmm. So again, if your listeners don't understand omega-3s, it's a polyunsaturated fatty acid. We have different versions. We'll keep it simple: ALA, DHA, EPA. DHA has the highest percentage in the eye. And remember going into, the front versus the back, both. It's highly concentrated in the eye. And it has a lot of functions, from, anti-inflammatory to helping oil glands, et cetera. So there's a conversion that we have to make for a non-fish version of DHA, which is the ALA conversion. So ALA comes from, let's just say, nuts. Okay. It's a precursor to DHA. What happens is, and a lot of people don't understand this nutritionally, that estrogen actually upregulates key enzymes that convert that ALA to EPA DHA. So premenopausal women actually have technically higher DHA than men. And you could argue that's because of pregnancy, you want to give DHA to your baby, et cetera. But that synthesis tanks during perimenopause and menopause. So the endogenous conversion actually is worse. So formulating this in terms of like, what can you do? Well, one, again, it depends on how proactive your practitioners are. I test for omega-3 status in all my patients now, especially our dry eye. I just want to know. And mind you, I live in a very high fish area. Like I live by the beach. Okay. So we have great access to fresh fish and seafood. And that's the most bang for your buck, especially the salmon family, to get omega-3, especially DHA. And I haven't had one patient yet that has good values. It's crazy. And, so going into what are some proactive things? Well, let's talk about our omega-3 status. You can improve that. So that's one big take home that I like to kind of say when you're looking proactively for prevention in terms of eye conditions. B complex. So the B, just the vitamin Bs as a whole, your your B status, that's another one that improves optic nerve health, retinal metabolism. There's even studies now that reduces the risk for certain macular degeneration, especially early signs of macular degeneration, conversion. That's a very good way of understanding how the actual mitochondria kind of function and that energy production. The eye has one of the highest energy outputs of any other organ in your body and highly mitochondrial reliant. So vitamin B status, that helps with understanding your homocysteine and anti-inflammation. There's also protein. I know protein is a big one in terms of the menopause talk.
Yes.
And I'm sure it's like almost like, oh my God, protein. I'm not going to get nuts with like all the proteins and creatine, but one protein that a lot of people don't understand well is taurine. And I actually just did a post on this, and it was like, it's just so many people are so unaware of taurine, which is, it's an amino acid actually, and it doesn't create like muscle and bones, but it does support your retinal function. It's highly concentrated in the retina, in the back of the eye. It's anti-inflammatory and antioxidant. And that's usually seen in foods that have certain meats in them. So if you are abiding by like a very vegan or fully plant-based diet, you want to make sure you're getting your taurine. Then we have carotenoids. So that's all the carotenoids are, they're like the bioactive plant pigments that really help us have the best antioxidants in our body. But they're very specific ones that are great for the eye. And that's lutein and zeaxanthin. So the lutein and zeaxanthin are part of the green leafy vegetables, okay? And lutein and zeaxanthin help mitigate almost all eye conditions, including macular degeneration, and which is the number one cause of blindness over the age of 65. So knowing that you're getting enough greens in your diet, obviously that, we have, when we go into perimenopause, I don't know if your viewers know that you may have like different food cravings. I don't know if you've talked about this.
I have.
Yeah. And it, it reduces your desire. But to eat like whole foods. And it's crazy, but there's this thing that we're seeing that patients are losing that desire to eat the healthy foods. And, to really emphasize that we need this for our eyes to function properly. It's the natural blue light filter. So plants in your food, green leafy vegetables, very essential for eye health and anti-aging. So these are just kind of like a few highlights. Now going into other aspects of menopause, we could kind of dabble. My favorite one to talk about is sleep. So sleep issues, sleep apnea, poor sleep by itself is a risk factor for many eye diseases. And it's published over and over again. There's tons of research behind it. Glaucoma, dry eye. You have to have sleep. And I think now we can go into, obviously, as we discuss HRT therapy and sleep support, but we definitely need sleep. And sleep is a part of eye health mitigation, to help eye health support. And I think this is a hugely missed opportunity. So get a sleep apnea test. So women don't understand that a lot of so I don't know how much your viewers know, like sleep apnea has this like connection with an overweight male who was snoring profusely in the middle of the night, and you like hear it. And that's not necessarily how a woman actually presents. And women don't get as many sleep studies. And I feel like that is something that needs to be addressed. Now, what other ways can we help support sleep? Blue light mitigation towards the end of the night. Some patients need microdosing of melatonin. Obviously, make sure that's good with your provider. And there's tons of other different ways of calming the mind down at the end of the day, outside of, again, talking about HRT therapy, progesterone in particular. That is something also that is very necessary for proper eye health. And I would say the big last one is movement, not exercise. I'll say just movement. Yeah. Moving is, one of the best ways to help our mitochondria. Not the food, not the supplement. Moving actually helps our mitochondria age less. And mitochondrial health is really essential for ocular health. So movement. So those are kind of like the top tier kind of categories I would call to address. I am running right now like a whole download about all of these points with the data behind it as to how to really like mitigate eye health during perimenopause and how to reduce all these risk factors. And I'm excited to do it because I honestly think there's so much to talk about. And I know we only have like whatever amount of minutes, and I will, kind of end with that part.
Yeah, I think that, I talk all the time about stress mitigation and the diminished resilience of stress at this point in life and sleep. And it's not sexy. It's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple to talk about. And it's amazing. The impact is so much broader. And you don't think, I never really think about my eye health until I have an issue like, I have to expand my font on my phone, or, I can't see in the dark as well, or my eyes are really dry like they've never been before. That's when I start to recognize eye health. But eyes do a lot more heavy lifting than we give them credit for.
Yeah. And there's study after study. If you ask patients or survey them, like which sense of all your senses would you lose first? Usually eyes are not top of the list.
Yeah.
So, and knowing that women globally have more blindness than men. There's a higher incidence of eye disease in women. Now, we can't say that that's because of hormones only, but there is a higher incidence of eye disease in women than men. And that's a global issue. So whether it's socioeconomic, whether it's an aging thing, but again, it's usually some sort of access to care. There's so many reasons why women should be more proactive with their eye health. And I think one part that I disagree with, I know a lot of the general, academies, like they recommend certain times that you should be getting your eyes checked, right? Like a standard of care. And I believe like when you're 40, it's like every 2 to 4 years, you should get just routine eye care, like without even complaining about your eyes. Like I always say, you don't need to complain to get your eyes checked. It's, if anything, get your eyes checked before you start complaining. And I kind of disagree with it saying like 40, right? And because I feel like women should be even more proactive. I think there also should be like nuances to that, where if I know a woman is surgically in perimenopause or menopause, so how many women are like that? How many women go into surgical menopause at the age of 38, at the age of 35?
Yeah.
And you start really like looking, or, IVF, rounds and rounds of IVF pumping hormone. These women should also get their eyes checked. So I don't really love that we kind of put a standard of care for men and women at the same time. I really think I wish it was more personalized to women's health in terms of recommendation. But yeah, your eye complaints shouldn't be the only reason why you get your eyes checked. I do think that is a missed opportunity, and it's bad messaging. And I'm hoping that we, as eye care professionals, can get that kind of addressed. I always say we're very strict on our dental care, even though we
That's
can
exactly what I was thinking
replace
of.
our teeth.
Exactly.
And I have this conversation with pediatrics. I'm like, they have to get a pediatric dental and all their teeth fall out. Not to say that it's like, wait, why wouldn't we check all these, children also? And I know we're not talking about that right now, but yeah, so I think that is a missed opportunity right now, where women are not proactively being screened properly early enough, especially if they're aware of certain risk factors in their family. They have maybe they have some mini complaints, not major complaints. Obviously, when you have a major complaint, it pushes you to go to a practitioner. But I think that is something that I would like to definitely take home to this audience, that you should have your eyes checked, even if you don't have eye complaints.
I've had vision issues since I was a freshman in high school. So I don't even know what it's like to not get my eyes checked every year.
There's a lot out there. But I do think, when we talk about other eye conditions that cause vision loss. So for example, right now, even if we just took like glaucoma is an optic nerve disease. So basically you lose nerve tissue and we can't get that back. Okay. And it's a very slow progression. And by the time the patient notices they have any vision loss from glaucoma, it's way too late. And there's certain risk factors with glaucoma, obviously family history, ethnicities, obviously aging, but there's been consistent research showing shorter times of estrogen within a woman's life is a potential risk factor for developing glaucoma. And, it's not like just like I found this like study that's dug in some, No, I actually presented this at the American Optometric Association in Phoenix a few weeks ago. And I have to tell you, the response level from a professional audience was like, wow, we're like missing the boat in having this conversation with our female patients. Like if you know a patient has a longer life without estrogen or longer lifespan without estrogen, maybe we should be screening for glaucoma better in those patients. And maybe that should be a new risk factor, although it's not a part of the, punch list risk factors that we see in, standard protocols right now. But again, going back to, if you have a slightly elevated eye pressure, which we also can see, an increased risk with perimenopause and menopause, you don't feel that eye pressure. It's very rare. So you don't even know this is happening in your eye. You have no clue. And it takes years for it to actually affect the optic nerve. And there's procedures, there's medications, there's lifestyle changes that can help reduce your risk of developing glaucoma. It's not even an untreatable condition. So if it's found early, you have better chance of never having a visual problem from it. So that's just another prime example of being proactive during that midlife time.
Yeah. Is the pressure thing the thing that they blow at your eyelashes? Is that?
Yes. Okay. That is the standard.
I get that every year.
Yeah, there's different kinds, but that is a standard one.
Okay. So aside from that, what are some other screening things that women should be proactive about, regardless of whether or not they're seeing any changes in their vision?
So meaning when you say screening, meaning...
aside from glaucoma and concerns of glaucoma developing, are there other eye health issues that we should be trying to prevent as we get older?
Yeah, I think one missed communication again is the understanding of what dry eye disease is.
Okay.
So this is where it gets really fun. So dry eye is considered a disease. So based on the Tear Film and Ocular Surface Society, which is basically a global society that researches dry eye and why it happens and all the factors that can cause dry eye, they just released their newest publication, and they published this like thick, thick publication of research every so often, and it's called the DEWS report. And just recently, they just published like the newest definition. And I'm going to look this up for you because I would like your readers or your listeners to actually hear it, because it might change your perception of what dry eye disease is. So as per the TFOS classification, dry eye is a multifactorial symptomatic disease characterized by loss of homeostasis of the tear film and or ocular surface, in which tear film instability and hyperosmolarity, ocular surface inflammation and damage, and neurosensory abnormalities or etiological factors. So just that definition alone should make you think twice that dry eye may not just be, oh, this is annoying.
Yeah, like I've been looking at my computer screen too long and my eyes are tired or my contacts are bothering me. It could be more than just that.
Yes. And there's parts of dry eye, because kind of honing in this multifactorial kind of piece point. There's different reasons why different people get dry eye. Okay. So it's not just because of one reason. And because of that, depending on the reasoning behind it, there could be things that actually don't work anymore. For example, going back to meibomian gland function. So there is these oil glands in our eyelids, because a tear film is made up of three main components: oil, water, aqueous, and a mucus. Okay. So it's kind of like, it's not water. It's like there's a lot of other things in there. There's amino acids, there are enzymes. I mean, it is pretty fascinating what is in a tear. But let's just keep it simple. There's three pieces. The lipid layer, which is the oil part, that's like, oil and vinegar don't mix, right? Where does the oil go? It's on the top. It coats your tear and it helps it from evaporating. So there is a functional mechanism from these meibomian glands, these glands in our eyelids that help secrete this lipid oil layer. If it's dysfunctional for a long period of time, they die off. So it's like you can't get them back. And if there is meibomian gland dysfunction, there's therapies for it. And there's tons of things out there from, and we can talk kind of surface level, like there's lasers, there's nutritional changes, there are exercises, there's obviously, depending on how advanced, there's rosacea factors. So let's just say, you're not being proactive and you don't even know that this exists in your ocular, system. And you're just kind of like treating it with like a tear as needed, because that's just like what you got at the pharmacy, and don't ever buy Visine. That's the worst one of all. But anyway, so, but if you were proactive and somebody saw you and was able to tell you, hey, listen, your meibomian glands are clogged. It seems like some of them are already atrophying. Let's do this, so that it doesn't keep getting worse as you age. And now your quality of life, because ocular irritation is kind of like annoying. Yeah. I had dry eye for the first time in my life a couple years ago when my hormones went wacky. And I was like, I know I have dry eye right now. And this is so disturbing to my life, quality of life. So it's not so much maybe, of course, there's extreme cases, like you can lose vision with extreme dry eye situation, et cetera. But knowing that there are proactive things that help reduce it from getting worse, if you don't know where you're at and you're not getting proactive screening, and let's just say you have a primary screening and they're like, your dry eye is more complicated than maybe whatever that they need to offer. We even have now dry eye specialists. That's how crazy this condition has gotten. We have dry eye specialists in eye care. That is a newer subspecialty that I love seeing this with, my colleagues that address so many facets of dry eye. And this, going back to that key interpretation, that key definition of that multifactorial reasoning. So that should be looked at. That should be screened for when you're especially going through transitional parts of perimenopause, or if you have other comorbidities. You might have thyroid dysfunction, dry eye, any autoimmune, dry eye. A lot of those other comorbidities just kind of layer on with the perimenopause factors too. So that would be another big one. And not to mention, obviously, retinal health, going back, into the back of the eye, screening for retinal health. And that goes from vascular health to macular degeneration, early signs of that, or if it's in your family, being proactive with mitigating factors for those eye diseases too. And of course, your vision as a whole. And I know we have a little piece that we're going to get to about glasses, right?
Yes. We need to talk about those because I've got readers everywhere now. I bought the like 6-pack at Costco all of a sudden, and I have transition eyeglasses, but now even with contacts, I need to have something in addition. And so I'm not quite ready for like the bifocal contact lenses. My dad has those, and I'd rather just have the readers for when I need them. But that definitely, how much of it is just aging, and how much of it is not taking care of your eyes the right way?
So I would say, so the what we're talking about, like the eyeglass reading thing that you're mentioning, is the fancy word, the real word for that is called presbyopia. Okay.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with being nearsighted or farsighted. It's its own thing. Okay, and its own thing, and it affects men and women. It's not a woman thing. Definitely, men suffer from this as well, and it's biomechanical. Okay, so it's literally like a functional thing that's not happening anymore. It's like a lenticular stiffening. And I kind of like always explain it. It's like as if the old school cameras, not our iPhones, but we have a lens, right?
Yeah.
And I always say like you were able to kind of do that turning with your lens, like in and out, and then it just like the lens gets harder to turn.
Yeah.
It's kind of this feeling like you could still turn it, but it's like tighter, more difficult to get that focus in. And do we know why it happens? I don't really think we've even gone to the reasoning exactly. There's a lot of hypotheses of why it happens, but ultimately it is a biological part of life. Now, there are no published studies that demonstrate that hormonal decline directly alters that stiffness or accommodative or that focusing in particular. We do know that there are receptors in the lens, as I explained, and those are more for antioxidant purposes as far as we know right now. Now, anecdotally, now again, the research is not there saying, oh, you're a woman and, a hormone is going to make presbyopia happen, right? But anecdotally, like being in clinic for 20 years, I do notice like the trend. It's like, oh, my perimenopause, blah, blah, blah. Now I need readers. So I don't have good evidence of it. The only positive is that it's going to happen whether you go to perimenopause or not. So I wouldn't put the blame on perimenopause, like, oh, because of perimenopause, I am presbyopic. No, it wouldn't matter if you're a male or female. You're going to be presbyopic. And that range starts different for everyone. Some people are early 40s, some people are early 50s, and it also depends on your job title. I always say if you're driving a car as your profession, you may not notice it as annoying as a computer person, right? You're constantly using your focal point, which is getting tired because remember that it's slowing down and you're not, that muscle's not working as well. Now, there are exercises you can do. There are foundational things that can help support it going a little bit slower. And of course, there's tons of, stuff out there online and like how to like make it go away. I'm not like saying no, and I'm not saying yes to those, those trainers out there. For me, it's like, I also am like very respectful of people's time. So it's like, I started presbyopia earlier than even like what I was supposed to have. And I'm an eye doctor, obviously. I know this. And I'm like, okay, my hormones tanked and all of a sudden my reading got a little bit worse. So I do think there is some sort of connection. I can't prove it. But you know what? I'm happy to wear my readers as needed. And I can see with my readers, my proper readers, I have the proper number because also going too fast, not knowing what number is really adequate for you is also not great for your muscle function. I do kind of to, educate that where it's not like just anything. You just don't pick whatever feels right at the pharmacy. I do think that if somebody can test you, you are going to have a better assessment of what number you should get. And I always say, I love problems that have like a fix. And yes, reading glasses are annoying, but I don't have anything that I could say definitively, hey, eat this vegetable. You won't need reading glasses. So that's my 2 cents there about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like it, for me personally, it was really odd because my My contact prescription, my eyeglass prescription, it slowly declined. It got really wonky when I got pregnant, and then it kind of stabilized again. But everything felt really gradual. Like I could tell, okay, I've been in the same prescription for a year or two, and things are starting to get a little blurry. But it was insane to me how all of a sudden I could not read my phone, or I could not read the book I was looking at. Like it just felt like it happened overnight. And it's like, okay, I'm officially at the reader's point. Yes. It didn't feel like a gradual progression.
So there is like this concept of, we call it the threshold point. So it's like you're near working distance. So basically like if you're at 12 inches, 16, whatever that near working, there's a threshold of where your vision basically doesn't work anymore. So ultimately, once you kick to that threshold, because usually the early signs are, like in the morning, it takes me a few seconds to focus. Or I need a little more light at the restaurant, but I could still read it. Those things are pre-threshold. And then when you hit that, it's just that number, whatever that number is for the patient, obviously everyone is working distance or different, then it does like almost hit you like a ton of bricks.
Wow. Okay. I do remember like having to turn my screen up higher or being
like
in a
these
restaurant.
Little baby things.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's kind of like the runway. And then you get to this, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah. And it feels like it just hit me like, this is my birthday week. And all of a sudden I'm like, now I fall apart. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're sophisticated. Like we're not going to like poo poo it. We're going to say this is a new, it's like a new accessory you can play with.
Yeah, I'm going to have to get some cute ones. I mean, the 4-pack at Costco are very helpful to have like one over here and one over there. And, but I think it's time to invest in a cute pair for myself too.
Yeah. And also people don't realize magnifiers are different than optical lenses. So your head size is different than my head size. So where our pupils are centered in the optics of the lens also can affect the vision and the comfort of those glasses. So some people get like a little bit, their eyes turn in or their eyes turn out a little bit. That is a whole nother, basically binocularity issue that can actually get worse with certain magnifiers. So there is that other piece. It's not like one size fits all. And some patients do need optical lenses made custom to how their eyes are kind of positioned. And the higher the number it goes, the more dependent that becomes. So the lower the prescription, the less of that prism effect we get. But when you start getting into that 2 to 250 range, and it does stop, by the way, it's not a forever progression. That's another part of presbyopia. It goes through its steps and then it plateaus.
That's nice to know.
Yes.
I don't know when I'll get there, but I will eventually get there. That's good to know.
Just to make you feel better, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think for me personally, this has been, I don't want to say eye-opening because that's really cheeky, but there's a lot that I have overlooked, even from a whole person lens, when it comes to the eye, that this conversation, I feel like we could go on for like 5 days because we're just scratching the surface of what there is to know about it. And it's really fascinating.
Yes, there's going to be, I call it, there's definitely going to be a renaissance within this category. I think we're due for one. Just knowing that women suffer two to three times more than men in terms of dry eye and their complaints about dry eye, just that alone, and going into eye diseases. I mean, there's a lot of room for research, but I also think there's a lot of room for proactiveness and to understand how to kind of manage as you go along and find the right practitioner that may be able to help you. I get messages all the time from patients, like on social and things like that. Like the dry eye was actually the first sign of my menopause, perimenopause. Like sometimes it is literally the identifying sign before they had any hormone shifts, before, it was like their first sign. And I'm like, wow. Well, let's make this known. Let's put this on the menopause, symptom list. Let's get our menopause specialists out there to start asking about eyes. I work with one, and I asked her to change her intake form. She works in a different clinic. And I'm like, does your intake form even list eyes at all as a complaint? And she's like, no, but a lot of people just write it in.
Vision changes, dry.
Yeah. If they free write it. So think of that, if we can increase that awareness and have this crosstalk with the specialists or, the general health, practitioners, that maybe we can even mitigate certain eye diseases better and, get quality of life better for some of these women who don't even know that there's options for them for example, dry eye disease and such.
I feel like for right now where we are, we need to be our best advocates in all aspects of our health because we're still on that forefront of moving the needle in women's health. So what's the one takeaway that you could give somebody right now to help them advocate for themselves if they're listening to this and they're thinking, eye health has not even been something on my list of concerns. What's something that women can do to be proactive right now?
I think the first take home is that the eyes are not separate from the rest of your body. And, even hormonal transitions that we see with nutritional status, inflammation status, even vascular issues can affect your eye health from the front to the back of the eye. Think of it not as a scare tactic to go get your eyes checked, because I also don't like fear mongering. Like, it's not for fear. It's to actually feel like you are in a driver's seat, that you are supporting your longevity and you are supporting your wellness throughout all the decades of your life. And eye health is an essential piece of that. And the more that we understand that your eyes are one of the most important, one of the most important parts of your aging, and understand that we can do things to help support ocular health, just take that with you and know that as much as you can, be proactive with just routine eye care. Don't even make it an overshoot. Just get tested once in a while and just start there.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Gioia. I really appreciated having this conversation. I think it's the beginning. There are so many other things that we could talk about, but for the interest of your time and everyone who's listening, I know I could have a 3-hour conversation, but I don't know if anybody wants to listen to my 3-hour conversation.
This is why I'm making a download. This is why I'm going to do this, because it's
where can people find you if they're interested in learning more?
Sure. I have a few places for my patient care. It's integrativevision.com. That's my website. And I'm on social media, same handle, Integrative Vision. And I also have a personal doctor kind of education platform, Dr. Neda Gioia, DrNedaGioia on Instagram as well. And a subscription to our newsletters right off of our website and integrativevision.com.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll have all of that in the show notes as well. And again, it was so nice to meet you. I hope this is just the beginning, scratching the surface of this topic as we dig into women's health more and more every year.
Thank you for having me and putting this on the list of awareness.
Yeah. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Women Mastering Midlife. If something you heard today resonated, I'd be so grateful if you'd share it with a friend who might need a little extra support on her midlife journey. Remember, small changes can make a big difference, and you don't have to navigate this transition alone. We will be back next week with more expert guidance and compassionate conversations to help empower you to master midlife on your terms. Until then, you can find us on Instagram at Women Mastering Midlife, or come connect with me directly at Miss Victoria Bird. And you're looking for deeper connection and support, be sure to join us in the Women Mastering Midlife community. We'd love to continue the conversation with you there. If you've enjoyed this episode, please rate and review this podcast. It helps us reach more amazing women mastering midlife just like you. You'll find all the links from today's episode and ways to connect in the show notes below. See you next time.